It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Leo Laporte is on special assignment, but we have Alex Lindsay, we have Andy Ihnatko. We're going to be talking a little bit more about WWDC, a little bit about Craig Federighi and Phil Schiller on Talk Show, and quite a lot about iPhone 7.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 512, recorded June 21, 2016. Salty, salty funk.
MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Texture, the mobile app that lets you access the world's most popular magazines anytime, anywhere, using your phone or tablet. For your free trial, visit texture.com/MacBreak. And by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost, automated investment service and the most sophisticated way to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or you're just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/MacBreak and sign up to get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/MacBreak. And by Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/MacBreak and using the promo code MacBreak.
It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we talk about everything that has happened in Apple this week, any week, every week, as a matter of fact. Leo Laporte is, I think he's on vacation, but I'm going to say he's on special assignment because that's probably what he's really doing. But we've gotten the rest of the gang together for you, and that includes the inimitable Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. How you doing, Andy?
When I found out, and when Alex and I found out that you were hosting and Leo was going, we decided to create our own secessionist show movement.
Yeah, don't think of this as a show. Think of it as a coup.
Right, exactly.
That is the Pixel Core's own Alex
Lindsay. Our window
Lindsay.
has 2 people. Your window has 1.
Now, how do I know you're doing it together? Because your green screen skills are so top-notch, you could actually just be sliding into Andy's studio.
Well, you will notice that we don't actually cross over here. Now, we have been really working on some of the keying. So now this is the hardest part right there. Is to that's a one key over top of the other one. But
yeah,
are you doing that digitally, or are you cutting film?
It's mostly cutting film. There's actually guys back there like snipping, snip, 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 snip.
All right, so you Andy, you just crashed the studio with your Coke and your smile.
I see, Alex. I'm in DC for a Samsung Internet of Things summit involving politicians and people from the Department of Transportation and people from Samsung and people from Verizon, and I thought that I could get free Cokes if I stopped by Alex's place while I was here. I should mention that Alex was nice enough to actually lay in a supply of Mexican Cokes, and they did not last until lunchtime. I drank one as soon as I arrived. It's 90 degrees, and then I drank a second one, and then that was it. So now
my understanding.
This is their last can of Coke. I'm laying claim to it.
My understanding is that Alex put on the Iron Man armor, went to Mexico, picked up as many Cokes as he could carry, and then flew back before the show.
It was the only way you could get there and back in time. You know, that was what had to happen.
All right, so since we last met, I mean, we talked about the WWDC keynote, but
we're like guides at the same adventure safari zoo.
You know.
You do like the large primates exhibits. I do like the reptile exhibits.
I was thinking Jurassic Park Lego, but I wasn't sure how far off I was. All right, so since last we met, the WWDC keynote, obviously we talked about that already, but the entire week continued on. Starting the Tuesday night, right after the show, Mr. John Gruber of Daring Fireball fame had Craig Federighi and Phil Schiller on the Talk Show Live. I managed to watch the show, but it's available on video now. We have a transcript up of it as well. And I thought, Andy, I don't know what your opinion was, but I thought it was a really good show. And Craig Federighi in particular was incredibly candid, not just about what they did, but how they did it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, of course, credit to John. Because he creates an environment where those guys feel very, very safe. They feel as though they can talk openly and know that there isn't going to be like a gotcha right after it. They're not going to say, "Well, then why didn't you fix it?" John is. So they know that John is not a bozo. and also that he understands the process by which large systems get built. And so that's one of the many great things that John does for the entire Mac and iOS community now, is to have these little there's no clicker in your hands, guys. The snipers have been cleared away from the towers. You can speak semi-openly. But yeah, it's really the only time every year that I can sort of count on that level of freedom and candor from anyone at Apple.
And Alex, to me, one of the most interesting parts is they basically explained how they made watchOS faster. And they did it because basically by throwing DRAM at the problem. They had a little bit of RAM overhead, a little bit of extra power because they figured battery life was enough. And they just threw apps into resident memory. Is that a real fix for you?
Well, I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, I think a lot of times when we see the release, the version 1 being released, they know that there's optimizations that can be done, but they had to ship. So I think that, I don't think it's necessarily that they are. I think that they knew that that was a solution that was probably coming down the path, and that that it just wasn't ready for when they actually had to release the watch. So I think that. I'm looking forward to continuing to see how they progress the watch. Obviously, I think it was a pretty big upgrade, as far as the feature sets that we're starting to see. And they had alluded to the fact that they were at a certain stage when they released it, and there was obviously a long, development curve there. And so I think I'm excited to see, the features that they released here, as well as whatever comes out in the fall.
Does it mean, Andy, do we still need new hardware in the fall, or is this enough that they could maybe buffer into March if they wanted to?
I think they're going to create I think there are very few reasons to demand that someone buy a new watch in the fall. I did install the watchOS beta. It's plenty sprightly to me. I know that we've been talking the past couple of weeks about how I keep every developer beta device in a mayonnaise jar in a separate yard to make sure it doesn't affect my actual production stuff. But actually, it improves the experience of Apple Watch, even my first generation hardware, well enough that I kind of would like to wear this all the time. So yeah, I don't think they're going to need new hardware. It was very, very clear that I felt as though, and some conversations I've had have sort of buttressed this, was that Apple was being very, very conservative about what the first generation of the OS could do. I think they still left themselves a lot of headroom for future expansion because they spent so much time trying to get that first generation hardware correct. I think they believe that they have to spend a couple of years watching how people are using this and watching what hardware features developers want. And we're not so much talking about cameras so much as, should we put more storage in there, or should we put more active RAM? Is the RAM we've got in there right now fast enough, or is it okay? Can we cut some corners here? And it really does take them a couple of years to figure out what the second generation is going to be. If they just slapped a camera or extra RAM in a new version for 2016, it would be nice, but it really wouldn't be worth it. If all the things they can put their engineers on, that's not going to be as good a bang for the buck as Apple Watch 2 after 2 years of observing people using this thing.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance to talk to you last week, Alex, but they did things like they did flatten the interface a lot. Glances are now part of the apps. The Friends hub has gone away. It's now buried in Messages. The carousel is still there, but they didn't even show it off. They brought Sprite Kit and Scene Kit to the watch, inline videos. Is that exciting to you just from the production standpoint?
I think a lot of this stuff looks good. I mean, I think fundamentally they don't have to do very much. I'm very attached to my watch at this point, my iWatch. So there's not a lot that they have to lift. I mean, the fact that I see my Slack and my SMS and I'm able to run little timers and stuff like that is enough to keep it on my wrist. The thing that I want more than anything else, and mine is a very geeky need, which is that I just want to be able to design my own watch faces. Yeah. From a production perspective, I get that they can put more, of the. They can add more features to what's there, but what I want to do is design what I want on my watch. I want to be able to have a layout tool that lets me lay out how, where I want everything. And specifically for me, I just want a digital watch with seconds.
Yeah,
I probably the whole thing would go away if they just gave me a digital watch with seconds.
I will never use the phrase, the deathly phrase, what Apple should be doing, or Apple what should have done. I would say that if I were in charge of the team, I would say that the very first instant we can have some sort of an API for creating third-party custom watch faces. Yeah. That every other feature, every other thing that's on the list is secondary to that.
I mean, it is a watch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got honestly, I've got my Moto Android Wear watch charging over there on the table. But really, as good as all the features of that watch are, I think that 40% of why I love it is that I can have a little cartoon rocket ship secondhand going over little cartoon planets if I want. And then when someone comes out with a really hugely functional watch face that's I think is genuinely beautiful and has my taste, I can put that on instead. And failing that, I just think that Apple hasn't stood up. Apple, I don't think, has stepped up to the problem of, if we're not going to let people create their own watch faces, we have to create something really beautiful, that's as beautiful designed as a digital watch face as the Apple Watch is as a physical object, piece of jewelry.
And I have to admit, this is one of those ones where there's a lot of times when Apple does something, I go, well, I might not agree with it, but I understand why they're doing X, Y, and Z. And with this one, I don't understand. And I don't understand why we can't build our own watch faces. I mean, I guess it was a little bit like when we got an iPhone and we were like, I don't understand why I can't add apps. And when we got an Apple TV, I'm like,
there was no wallpaper until I think iOS 4, right?
Yeah, but you're just like, I don't understand why we can't add apps. And for both the Apple TV, for the, and I get that I'm sure that they have something up their sleeve, but I just wish that they would pull it out faster.
It's like Apple has come home. Our daughter Apple has come home from the first year of college and has announced that she is dropping her major of business and going into ceramics. Like, that's not the choice I would have made for you, honey. I hope you know I have faith in you. I hope you know what you're doing. I see some flaws in this, but I'm not living your life for you. And
so that one I don't understand, but hopefully sometime soon we're going to do that.
One of the other things we learned is how the auto unlock feature works, and that is the Apple Watch has to be within 3 meters. It uses time of flight, so it actually measures the length of time it takes the signal to go from the watch to the computer, and that's to stop something like a relay attack. So if Andy was sitting in between Alex and his computer, he couldn't pick up the signal and then beam it to the computer and try to unlock it on his own. But it also requires two-factor authentication, which Apple debuted last year, has been rolling out ever since. And Andy, that's a level of complexity that not everybody is still comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, it just has to work. And it also really points to how this is deeply embedded in Apple's philosophy, because the situations in which someone would be able to use that technology and abuse it to unlock a Mac, the way that I've heard it described, it makes me think that, well, I am sitting right in front of Alex's computer. Game is already over. All he has to do is step out for about 10 or 15 seconds to take a phone call, and I can do a variety of damage by simply getting access to his USB port. And if he's leaving for an hour, again, ball game over. I can get everything, but I think it's more of an indication of how seriously Apple treats everything. That if there is any way to make this more secure, make it more safe, to take that 1 in 1,000 chance and turn it to 1 in 10,000 chance that something bad will happen, when it comes to security, they're going to do it. I do think that, though, I haven't played with that feature myself, but I think that if it doesn't, all it has to do is not work 2 out of 5 times. Mm-hmm. And the user is not going to try to use it a 6th time. They will turn it off, intending to go back and fix it later, but then they will never go back and turn it back on again.
And there is some feeling that, like Touch ID, it will enable, because right now we type in our passwords all the time. You open up the lid, you type in your password. Almost everybody has a password, I think, enabled for their Mac at this point. But with this technology, you'll only have to enter the password when the computer reboots. So if it's just asleep, you can open the lid, and if your watch is within proximity, it will just open and work. And the feeling is that, just like Touch ID, it might let people actually increase the complexity of their password because they won't have to enter it so often. So
although it also increases their chance of forgetting it.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's a complex one and they don't have it stored somewhere, I think that I now that I've gotten used to the Touch ID, I have to keep on remembering what my password is. It's somewhat complex, and but B, I think that I find when I have to put a passcode in, I'm now very conscious to how unsecure that is. Like when I'm on a plane, when I'm, in front of my kids, when I'm in front of, like all of those things, you really want to be able to drop, to not have to.
That's why Snowden put a blanket over his whole body when he put his in.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many subtle things about this. I hit this, I rode Amtrak for 8 hours down here. And so I wanted to log into my Plex server to get access to my movies. And I recently changed it, I took the wrong guess as to what it was. So, okay, I'll go into 1Password and pull it back up again. And the last time I used 1Password on my iPad, it was to get to copy out my MasterCard number. And so I one password gives you that blank screen with that one, what is your master password? Okay, it's bum, 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 bum. Unlock it, and suddenly my screen is filled with, here's your MasterCard number, Andy, and whoever's sitting right next to you in big letters. And so that's when I would, as the developer of that app, I would say, note to self, make sure that if it has not been accessed in 5 minutes, then make sure you take the user to a blank page that here's just a list of keys. So that's the sort of stuff we're talking about. There's so many subtle things about passwords that that make perfect logical sense, but then when you put it out in the field, you find that you kind of, by not thinking about the 1 millionth instance, you've kind of borked things.
I did notice as an aside that I use private browsing almost all the time, just the same way I use it on the desktop. And I noticed that now when you transition back and forth between private browsing and other apps, it blanks the browser content every time you go to and from it, so you can't actually see it until you're in there. And that, I didn't think it made sense because I'm the one looking at it, but then I realized there could be a bunch of people around me.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things that have been tweaked and still need to be tweaked. It still annoys me that I think that the Safari browser purges content for memory purposes a lot more frequently than I think it has to or than it should. The number of times it's tantalizing. I wish that it would at least blank the screen before when I want to switch back into Safari, blank the screen first, then switch into it, because I've done things. So many times I've had like the screen that has, here's the MBTA commuter rail schedule, and it's already there, and I left it on that page, and then I went over to another app just to check something, went back in, and then I see in Safari, I see for 2.1 seconds that screen before it tries to refresh itself, and because I'm not connected, I'm in airplane mode, I lose it completely.
Or you hit the ad because it didn't push it down the page fast enough for your finger. That happens to me all the time.
The number it's still kind of, and this is not exclusive to Apple. This is also true of all my Android devices. I'm still reflexively screenshotting anything that's important because I may not be able
boarding
to.
Passes.
Right, exactly. It's
boarding passes. Yeah. You get it. You're always like, I'll open up the United app and it's like reloading. I'm like, what? So yeah, no, and what's funny is, of course, my phone is tied to my Apple TV at home, and so my kids love it. I turned it off, and then they complained because they love the fact that they can see, when it's on a screen share or screensaver mode, that they can just see what I've been shooting pictures of, and so they really enjoy it. But then there's these odd photos of business cards, some floating across, and screen captures of my boarding pass, and that type of thing. So
I'm in the habit of taking pictures of like receipts and stuff like that. Yeah, and like I'll set up a new device that's like, oh, I really didn't want people to see how much I paid for to get the new transmission put in. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
There was an interesting sort of I don't know what the right word for it was. A shoulder check during the event too, when they started explaining how Apple is doing deep learning and how they're doing computer vision. And it was a funny joke, but I think it goes to the philosophy of the two companies, where they were talking about privacy and they were talking about, could you do this deep learning and could you do this computer vision without sucking up everybody's content to the server first? And Federighi said, it turns out that we can figure out what a mountain looks like without having to take your photos. The detectives of Apple can just go around and figure out this is a mountain. And they did announce an impressive amount. I don't know exactly how it compares to what Google can do, but there's thousands of objects and hundreds of different categories. I don't know if you checked how many it was, Andy, but it doesn't seem as much as what Google can do, but it seems more than what I expected given the constraints Apple imposed on themselves.
Yeah, and it's totally unfair to have any expectation that if any deep learning based feature that Apple does has to be as good as Google's right outside the board. Just as it was wrong to think that the first version of Apple Maps was going to be as good as Google Maps, because they have been working on this, and this has been a core technology of theirs for years, and it became a tentpole feature of all their products just last year, where they want to make sure they put that phrase into play. But they do have they got a big challenge ahead of them. It really is not. I think that you can't be a responsible commentator without noticing that the entire demo of Photos tracks step by step with features of Google Photos. So that's not a problem, because Google Photos has a lot of features that I would like to be able to access everywhere. But it means that gives people the opportunity to say, especially if your spouse has an Android device and you've got an iOS device, to say, okay, Thank you, Apple Photos. That is indeed the pointy thing in front of the big blue thing with a big yellow round thing on top of it is indeed a mountain and a sky, whereas the Google app is saying, well, that's Mount Shasta. I know where Mount Shasta is. I know where the track of the sun is. So that was clearly taken at 1:22 p.m. On this day of the week. And by the way, that mountain, it's the things that Google can identify and actually help you out with are really fine-grained. And so I think that it's a good idea for Apple to coast a little bit and say, isn't it nice we're giving you these features? We'll start bragging about it in a couple of years when we get to see and analyze a lot more photos than we're seeing and analyzing right now, because they're on a pogo stick, and someone else has been making Formula F1 cars since 1973. So direct comparisons are probably not very helpful.
Well, I think also there's a different agreement, that Apple has with its users and Google has with its users that allows Google to iterate much faster than Apple. So I think that, and I think that Apple users Apple has decided that their users care more about privacy than ease of use or necessarily robustness. But I think that those different agreements definitely gives Google a strong advantage.
Yeah, as alternate every hour of every show we do, as Rene alternates saying that isn't it great that we have choice, and then I agree with him, or I say it and then Rene agrees with me. It's great that we have that choice. If you feel comfortable with the way that Google does business, and there's no reason why you necessarily shouldn't, it's a personal choice. There's so much more you can do with that technology if you allow that entity to have more access. However, for a lot of Apple users, it is an actual feature that I'm not just protecting my data from Apple, I'm protecting my data from anybody who might want to have access to Apple. Right. And so they're willing to say mountain as opposed to Mount Shasta 1:22 p.m. They're willing to give that up if it means that they get something in return. And so each one, there's a contract, there's a deal that is made. It is beneficial to both parties, and you have the choice of A or B.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, we've talked about this before, where I just want people to be aware of the cost of these things. For example, when you're paying with money, you see it come out of your bank account. When you're paying with time, like if you're installing patent-free Linux, you can see the clock go tick, 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 tick. But when you pay with data, you don't see that data floating up into the cloud. So some people believe it's effectively free. And for the most part, it is. But then you once in a while have this thing like an Edward Snowden who comes out and says, oh, by the way, the NSA is also, going out, like monitoring their ex-significant others and going through all your photos. And then you kind of wish they didn't have access to that stuff. So I think the balance is really important.
It's a really broad canvas with a lot of variables involved in it. One of the things that I think enters into the conversation is that so you don't trust Google for reasons that are perfectly reasonable, but realize that you're going to be using the web, and people who are entities that are far, far more liberal and more aggressive than Google is trying to get at your data. Even the fact that you are using, if you're getting discounts at your grocery store, that data is being leaked out. And so it really is such a big world that you have to deal with, and you have to understand where your data is leaking out. Again, I feel like I'm making good transaction with Google for that reason. And at some point, you really just have to say, this is the world that we live in, and we have to live in it.
And I have to admit that I think that you either have to put on a foil hat or realize that a lot of that data, because the data is. I was talking to somebody that works in IT for a large grocery store, and I mentioned the fact that I always use my parents-in-law, their phone number. And I tend to just use that all the time. And so it's not mine.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, he's like, oh, that doesn't matter at all. He goes, as soon as you use your credit card with that number, you're connected. It's like there's not, we don't, that it's much more insidious than you one time is all it took. And after that, they're just tracking the whole thing.
At Stop and Shop, I thought I was getting away with something because, well, I've got the card, but I don't want to use it. So wait, what's in these menus? Oh, forgot my card. Oh, touch that. Saying, well, would you like to verify with your phone number? Or, no, I don't. Like, okay, here, thank you for scanning your card. It's like, yes, I'm getting away with something, until it wasn't like for 6 months later, I realized that, oh, that's right, I'm actually using my credit card, and they can see that, and so they're going to figure that out. If they didn't have that, they'd figure out that, okay, who tends to mistakenly touch the Spanish button and then have to go back for English? Like, okay, they got me. You have to, just like when I bought my bike, I had to make peace with the fact that there are bad people out there who are going to try to steal it, and that if I were riding that bike and locking it places long enough, at one point it's going to get stolen. And so I have to ask myself, do I want to never ride my bike, or do I want to simply accept that bad things can be mitigated, but they can't be completely gotten rid of? And privacy is really one of those things.
There's an interesting article by a developer named Kay Yin on Medium that sort of deep dives into Apple's computer vision, and he said there's 7 emotions that it can detect, including greedy, disgust, neutral, scam, smiling, surprise, and suspicious. And
I think
thousands,
that's for the new Disney live-action remake of Snow White.
4,432 different objects, and they've got everything from graphs to gators to automatic teller machines to toilets to biscotti to, I want to know who programmed in biscotti, caramels, cheesecake, dining rooms. And the list goes on. And he is finding it does pull up, not just a mountain, but some types of mountains, like actual locations of mountains. But, obviously it's early days and stuff hasn't even shipped yet.
Rockets.
But it'll still be interesting to see how far they get compared to people who've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. And it'll be great to see another point of view on how deep learning can be used. I think Google does a really fantastic job with it. Because again, I use Google products every single day, and I'm routinely really, really pleased and surprised with how well it does. As usual, as when my train was like an hour outside of DC, swipe left to Google Now. I'm like, I'll be damned. I didn't put a damn thing inside this page, but it has figured out every single thing I would need to know. Also, things that maybe I would like to know. I was shopping for I was looking at speakers last week, and it told me, oh, I noticed that you actually clicked on this link to learn more about the products page for this. Did you know that this store now has discounted it from $250 each to $150? Like, I did not know that, but I'm going to think about that. Well, so, but it'll be good to see. Apple is not going to copy the way that Google turns that into actual practical features. The way that they can really figure out how can we best do that. When you think about how they can apply deep learning to, let's say, the health app, and just simply very, very quietly, if I've told the app, or if my spouse or one of my adult children has said, I've talked it over with mom, and the mom is okay with you sharing with Apple having access to pretty much all the sensory data that is picked up by health. The ability to, after having an X number of tens or hundreds of thousands of people enable that, and be able to tell you, your mom or your caregiver, this is not a diagnosis, but the changes to your mother's gait, the speed at which she now reads the pages, the unsteadiness when I can tell that she's holding it in her left arm as opposed to her right. These are good reasons to get her a Parkinson's test, because we have noticed that there's a correlation between this data that we're taking over the past 4 or 5 months, and at least a good reason to at least have some tests done.
Well, and I think that definitely we're going to see a lot as we look at the biometrics and everything else, we're going to see, and as Apple has a higher sample rate, as health providers have a higher and of course using security and anonymizing the data, but they will be able to. I think we're going to see all kinds of correlations that you just never were able to sample. When you're waiting for someone to actually fill something out, to actually, like write something down, it is entirely different when, because it took me a little while to figure out, like, how does my watch know that I was walking versus exercising versus, it's making all these decisions. I don't know if it's always accurate, but for some reason when I fly, my watch thinks that I'm actually flying. Like I always break the record on my exercise. It's always like, and I was like, I don't quite understand why it does that, but it's
You've been going at 300 miles an hour for 6 hours.
No, it's just think that I'm actually flapping, because I always like, you burned 2,000 calories today. I'm like, I flew to Istanbul.
That should be a setting, because there are times where it's not until like the next day or the day after. Like I was going through my Instagram, I tweeted out a picture that from like beautiful dusk picture in Boston Common. So, well, it's one of those beautiful days that you don't notice until you look at your app that you've actually walked longer than a half marathon. Because I actually had been walking like from Cambridge to downtown Boston. Then wait a minute, that wouldn't be 13 miles. Right. I must have been on the train and just jiggled it just enough. Like, but damn it, I'm going to take it. I'd much rather believe the beautiful
you're an expressive
lie.
Talker. You talk gesturally.
Exactly.
The last thing I thought was really interesting. I think the line of the night went to Phil Schiller when John asked him about search ads in Apple in the App Store, and Schiller just very calmly said, "Well, John, I noticed that before this show, you read 3 ads. 2 out of the 3 seem to be relevant to the interests of this show." And, because a lot of stuff on the internet now is advertising backed. And he went on to explain sort of how the subscriptions would work and how in an ideal world, you could have subscriptions for every app. But there are, in some cases, legal concerns that the lawyers have to hammer out to decide that, yes, you are providing ongoing value commensurate with the ongoing subscription pricing. And it seemed like that was something Apple was still wrestling with.
And I think they're going to continue to wrestle. I think that ads have not been something that Apple has quite figured out, just because it's so not part of their culture. Collaborative workspaces and ads are not something that I think are Apple's strong suit at the moment.
Remember when they had when Steve unveiled the ad network, it was such an Apple ad network that says that we are going to do most of these ads in-house, and they're going to be beautiful. They're going to maximize the experience afforded by the context of this device. And everybody, I think users and advertisers alike, were saying, we want a picture of the car. We want a price on the car. We want a link that people can tap to get more information about. I'm glad that you decided to do an augmented reality thing where we can imagine what this cloud in the sky would look like if the car was. I'm saying that really we're okay with the way Google just here's the JPEG, here's the text. now bring us users.
Right.
All right. So on the theme of ads, Leo was kind enough to record a few for us while he was on secret special assignment. So can we see one of those, Leo?
Thanks, guys. Wait a minute. Let me interrupt just for a moment, if you don't mind, and we'll get back to MacBreak Weekly in a second. But first, a word from our sponsor, as they say, Texture. I love Texture. Texture is like Netflix for magazines, right? So with Texture, you can binge read magazines to your heart's desire. I still think magazines represent one of the great art forms. I grew up reading, Punch. Remember Punch? And no, you wouldn't. That's a British humor magazine. I happen to subscribe to it. National Geographic. My grandma had stacks. Problem is those stacks, right? You subscribe to magazines. What are you going to do? You feel like a serial killer of trees. Not nice. And if you buy them on the newsstand once in a while, that can really hurt your pocketbook. Texture solves all that. The best magazines delivered right to your tablet or your phone. You can read them at your convenience. And I'm talking the best magazines. You want the National Geographic? They got it. They don't have Punch, okay? But they do have the New Yorker, which frankly is even better. They have Wired magazine, Rolling Stone. Go to texture.com and see all the magazines you can get. Now, here's the beauty part. Every page of the newsstand issue, so you're never going to miss a thing, plus bonus features you can't put in print, like videos, and then back issues too. You can download content before you get on the plane, so you always have something to read. And one of my favorite parts is, and they encourage this, you can share it. You get 5 devices per account. So our family uses it. Michael's got his magazines. Boy's Life, I don't remember what he reads. Boy's Life, probably, right? Lisa's got her magazines. I got my magazines, all in the same Texture account. So then it's really affordable. And no more coffee table clutter. You don't have to leave 8 magazines in the seat back when you get off the plane. You can read the magazines to your heart's content. And if you're not sure what to read, they've got a top stories and new and noteworthy section to lead you to the best content. Their editorial staff is phenomenal. Texture is the way to read magazines for the 21st century. And I want you to try it for free right now. Go to texture.com/MacBreak. Texture.com/MacBreak for your free trial today. This is such a good idea. I'm so glad they came up with this. And they've saved me, by the way, a ton of money. Not to mention a bunch of dead trees on my conscience and a mess on my coffee table. Texture.com/MacBreak. Give it a try today. Back to MacBreak Weekly.
And we are back with Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times and the Celestial Waste of Bandwidth, side by side with Alex Lindsay from the Pixel Core. Funsies. That must be an awesome setup, Alex.
It's a pretty it's kind of a messed up setup right now, but we had technical difficulties before the show. We just kept on adding boxes, and everything's piled up, and there's wires everywhere. But
I got to see focused Alex. not that he's ever dizzy, but I'm saying
deploy.
I'm talking about, like, the Queen Elizabeth II was supposed to be on 1/2 a second ago, but there's glare coming off of her crown, and he's like, okay, I'm going to solve this chroma problem without anybody knowing about it in exactly 31 seconds.
Yeah, I was a little intense.
So one of the things we saw this week was Bank of America has announced that they will let people use Apple Watches at the ATM machine in lieu of a card. Traditionally, cards, you've inserted them in. There has been some problem with fraud, with skimming, with things like that. And now you can just go up to them, and the same way that you would use your Apple Watch to pay at a retailer, you can use the debit functionality to withdraw money at the ATM. Does that sort of solve the peeking at the pin and the skimming problem, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, NFC is bulletproof. This will work with pretty much anything that uses NFC, including Google Android Pay. And yeah, I mean, there's such rigmarole to keep your card safe. I always make sure that I block it with my hand when I'm inserting it. I always make sure I block it with my hand. I whip it out and put it right back in the wallet. And then when I have to type in my PIN, I always unfold my wallet, cover the entire keypad, and I can actually type in my PIN by feel. And with NFC, there's just so much to do to break that. Why would somebody want to get the amount of money that a freelance print journalist has in his checking account when you could basically own the entire banking system if you can break NFC? So yeah, this is long overdue, and I'd love to see it at gas stations. I'd love to see it everywhere that I pay for stuff.
I don't want to type codes in. I don't want to give anyone my credit card. I don't want like you get used to that. And I think
also,
some of these technologies,
I don't, in cold and flu season, I don't want to touch the keypad.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I just don't want to, you suddenly, I think when you start using Apple Pay, you suddenly start realizing how insecure your entire life was for so long, and you're just like, what were we doing? Even the chip card and all the other stuff, that's just inconvenient. Like the chip card takes forever. Now that we Americans are being subjected to it, we're all like, oh, what the heck? I have to leave it there, and then I have to do this thing. And
it's even worse because you stick it in there, and okay, so the bottom 7 digits of my credit card number are completely exposed. So I have to again, put it in, hold my hand over it, and then at least the ones that at my drugstore, for instance, it gives you that sound saying your transaction has been successful. Like, thank you very much for making me think there was supposed to be $1,800 and available on my credit card. Oh, yeah.
So I think that
a lateral move, to be sure.
Yeah, I mean,
it was great for me. I went to the airport and I went to the coffee place. I paid with Apple Pay. I went to the gate. I checked in because my boarding pass was on my Apple Watch. I didn't pull out my phone the entire time. I just walked around with the bag in one hand and my watch on the other and tapped my way all the way through.
How do you know? The question is, how do you do the whole I'm going to do? So I tend to turn my watch in, under like this, so that I can. I've done that. So I can just go like this over top of it. But I still feel a little geeky because it's always there's a little bit of effort to get the United app to stay up and open, so it's not it's never. I find that with my phone, it's a little bit more casual. With my watch, I feel like I'm still working too hard to do
Air Canada has done a really good job lately. They've even started pushing gate change. For a while, the gate was just blank all the time, and you had to go like an animal to the physical screen to see where your plane was going. But now they're pushing the gate updates. I've done the watch turnaround, but they don't have any sort of top part on their scanner. It's just a bottom scanner plate. So I get it ready. It stays there. It gives me about 2 or 3 minutes, I think, on timeout, and so I do it when I'm right before there. And there's always a moment of abject horror on the person's face because they're seeing you try something they haven't really seen that often before, and they're sure it's not going to work, it's going to delay everybody, and they're going to get frustrated. And then you just tap, and whether it's a cashier who doesn't have to make change or process a credit card, or it's the gate agent who doesn't have to, because they get nervous when they're picking up your phone too, because maybe they've dropped several over the last few years. And you just tap it and you go through, and there's this big, enormous let go of breath, and then they get really, really excited, and they almost want to high five you, and then you just go on to the plane.
And it's been 2 years. Don't we all still feel like we're getting away with something when we just wave our phone and then walk away with the hamburger and hey, I didn't pay anything for you? But isn't it? But it's interesting that there really are still these human social interface components. Even when I had my Apple Watch on, which again, NFC cannot come to Android Wear fast enough. It is the one feature I categorically miss of Apple Watch, because that is just damn near magic. But even when I have my Apple Watch, though, if I'm at a cashier, I like the theatricality of I'm taking the cashier can see me. I'm taking out my phone. I am resting it down on the pad where it says rest your phone here. And and if he or she glances up, she sees that, okay, he's paying with his phone, as opposed to he's just standing there looking at me expectantly. Is he a creep? Is he an idiot? Does he not know how money works? Or did I miss something?
I think for me, the big one is, and you know it's the future, but when you're at the Apple store and you buy your own stuff with your own phone, like you just, you just scan it and then you're walking, every time I walk out, I'm always like, I really didn't pay for this. Like
that's how I feel with Nexus at customs. Like I'm just sure I'm going to get tackled after I go 4 feet through the airport because you just walk out. It's ridiculous.
I want to make an offer to. I know there are people who want to have a successful YouTube channel. That if you have if I see an actual legit video of someone dressed up like the Hamburglar, who actually walks into the Apple store and walks out with an expensive piece of kit, and of course they've actually paid for it.
Dressed as the Hamburglar.
I will fund you at least the $5 a month level.
There you go.
I was talking to a developer at WWDC, and of course they brought Apple Pay to the Mac through Safari. But right now you have to authenticate with an Apple Watch or an iPhone. Maybe Touch ID will come to a Mac or a future Mac, and we won't have to do that anymore. But the developer was saying it's sophisticated enough that they can maybe start to detect whether you have an iPhone or Apple Watch in proximity and only give you the Apple Pay button if they detect that it's there. And then you don't create a shopping cart anymore. You just hit the Apple Pay button, and in the background, they bundle up everything that you buy and ship it to you. And there's no longer this thing of, do you want to keep shopping? Do you want to check out? Do you want to go to your cart? Do you want to have all these items bundled together for your convenience? It's just they detect the Apple Watch or the iPhone. It shoots a secure token over a secure continuity connection, and your purchases come to you. And it's increasingly feeling, like Andy said, like magic.
Yeah, and Google's actually been testing out. They have a pilot program, I think, in the Bay Area with some McDonald's and some other stores like that, where there are sensors in the arches of as you enter the store, where it can read your digital footprint coming in and verify that it's not just that someone walked in with your phone, but there is a combination of Bluetooth transponders that we associate with this person, which means that when this person takes their purchases to the cashier is just saying, there is no check for this table. No check.
Yes.
Your money is not good here, Mr. Ihnatko. God bless you in the work you do.
And just gotta secure those NFC ad chips so that you can't sideload your own ads. Just, growing pains. We didn't really get to
start selling pants with copper-lined pockets.
We didn't have Alex here last week, so we didn't get too deep into Apple TV, but there was a lot of really good announcements there, Alex, including the dark mode for the home theater, but also the single sign-on. I wasn't too excited because I'm a cable cutter, but I imagine for people who do have Comcast or Dish Network or something like that, this is a huge relief just in terms of getting online with their apps.
It is so annoying, like all these different codes and everything else, and I have to admit I'm a cable cutter, so it didn't affect me as much. But I know that when I had cable, it was annoying to have to go to different ones and everything else. So that was. But now I basically, if I can't get the internet version of the channel, I don't have access to it. I just and I watched the Golden State Warriors and the Cavaliers on ESPN, and we watch Penny Dreadful on Showtime and Game of Thrones on HBO, and so I have all and I pay whatever subscriptions are connected to that, because for me that's still a lot less than I was going to pay because I don't watch that many shows. So because I'm not surfing looking for something to watch, it's actually very easy for me to pay $7.99 or $9.99 or whatever for the handful, like for HBO and Netflix and Showtime and a couple other channels. It's still less than the cable, and I have I can watch it whenever I want. The idea of being tied into a schedule now, my kids, they were very confused by ads for a long time because they just didn't grow up with them. That's the crazy thing is
broken people have the habit of expecting that this is part of the deal that you're going to sign by watching Oprah or whatever.
Well, and also we had TV for a month. When we were in Pittsburgh, and we thought, oh, maybe we'll get TV out here because the bandwidth wasn't very high, so you couldn't watch all the stuff you want. And the first 2 weeks, my kids were just frustrated that the show kept on stopping. They're like, "What is going on?" And my son would be like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" Every time it stopped. And then the second half of it, they were asking for so many stupid little toys that we realized they were starting to get used to it. And now they were starting to ask us for all these things that literally don't exist for them if they're not watching morning cartoons. Yeah. And then we were like, okay, we gotta get rid get rid of the subscription pretty quickly.
It's kind of remarkable how quickly a habit that America has been in since 1958 can be broken. 10 years ago, I might have thought that, oh my God, what a sacrifice it would be because I can't miss all these shows that I really, really like. And really all it took was me never getting around, moving to a new house and never quite getting around to calling Verizon to install cable in my living room. They installed it it was installed in my office because that was where the broadband has to come in. It was installed in my bedroom because I'm not going to fall asleep reading a book like some sort of creature foul from the primordial ooze. But it's like I just never got around to it, which meant that if I'm in the living room, which is the most comfortable place to lounge around in, okay, well, I got my Roku box. I guess I'll watch YouTube, and then I guess I'll watch whatever streaming channels are available. And no, I don't get to watch everything that I want to watch, but there is so much great content on YouTube that fills the void. Right. And in the past 5 years, Netflix has legitimately turned into the most ass-kicking content provider ever. Not just mid-list movies that are kind of okay and TV shows that you never really got into, but okay, you'll watch it. I'm talking about like Destination.
Voltron, Andy. Voltron.
Exactly. They're having all the start in July. They're getting every single Star Trek movie except for the first one, plus the Trekkies documentary. So that's going to be like an entire day of watching. And so, and also let's admit that cable TV has gotten so much crappier since I moved into that house, and like so it was like I don't think that the cable company understands that you need to keep paying Mike Rowe as much money as you need to keep him making dirty jobs, because once Mike Rowe and dirty jobs go away, once Adam and Jamie stop making Mythbusters, okay, that's another channel that I no longer need. Now it's down to I need my Project Runway. I would like to keep getting the Food Network, and I need my Turner Classic Movies. Amazing Race, but that's on broadcast. That's okay. And because now all those channels are on the Sling service, and because Sling is now on Apple TV, I'm seriously like, it's just so hard to like say that I'm going to cancel my cable subscriptions, because it's such a part of life, especially for a freelancer who spends a lot of time during the day inside the house and has to keep himself amused. It's like, but really, you could do this. It would be perfectly fine. Sling is picking up the slack so wonderfully. Why?
Yeah, you got the Sling app. You got Siri search for YouTube videos, which looks really awesome, and you got live tuning, so you can just ask for a live program and it'll go right to it if it's available to you.
Well, and I have to admit that I part of why I like not having cable is because it keeps me from just sitting down there surfing. Like I go down as a destination. Like I want to go watch this thing, and I want to go down. Now sometimes I'll roam around movies or roam around, but it's not the same. There's something about the not clicking until you stop. You know, that I find myself. I've decided that's actually, it's like not keeping a lot of alcohol in the house.
That's true. That's true.
Not that would ever be a problem for me. But
that's the same reason why I don't buy cookies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because it's too easy. It's too easy just to nibble when you should be anticipating and having a good time. But yeah, I mean, I don't. I still have to watch the Colbert Show live, because ever since I was 17 years old, that the line of there's been this trench in my day that goes from 11:30 until 12. It used to be 12:30 until 1:30 with Letterman's old show. Then 11:30 to 12:30 that said, whatever you're doing right now, Andy, you're going to stop. And then you're going to watch you're going to watch this show that you're going to enjoy, and then after that you're going to contemplate what you're going to do with the next 30 minutes to 4 hours of productivity you think you have next. I was so discombobulated when between those two shows, when it's like it's 11:30 and I have nothing to do. I'm just going to sit on the sofa now and look at the
see,
wall.
But now you have playground to play with.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and isn't it? But it's terrible also. Like the Game of Thrones, like the last, no spoilers, but like this week's episode, I read that it cost $10 million to produce this one episode, and took them like 28 days to film, because it's a huge battle scene that they've been promoting for like 2 months. It's like the second to last episode of the season, and it's like I'm sitting there with my Roku, like with the remote in my hand, saying that they spent $10 million for this. I bet like people like broke their knees because of the battle scene, but they're basically at parity with the hydraulic press channel. because it's like, I kind of want to see what would happen if you had a steel ball bearing and a hydraulic press. Which one would win? And it's like, how much does a ball bearing cost? Like $2.10. You didn't have to buy a blank videotape for this. It's all like on a reusable video, digital media. It's like, and I can legitimately say that I am, for a lot of broadcast television, I am as amused by watching some of these people soldering and by watching
I think
robot building.
But I think from a content perspective, one of the things, because we do a lot of events for a lot of people, and we get to see this huge range of people spending, what they're per minute, so some of the events that we work on that people are spending, a couple, tens of dollars per minute, and other ones they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars per minute. And there's no correlation to viewership and how much you spend. No, there's just definitely like you see so often, it's become so important where the story is all that matters. The story is really all that matters, and it can be a very simple amateur story, and it can be a funny kid or someone, doing something. It doesn't have to be, these huge production values. Although I do appreciate the production values. We don't want to have the folks at Game of Thrones think. I think they would definitely do better if they spent $10 million an episode, every episode, all the time.
I wasn't suggesting that episode of Game of Thrones was not as good. I'm saying it's every bit as good as the steel ball bearing being crushed in a hydraulic press. But no, I keep thinking back to. I hope that this doesn't sound mean-spirited, because inside my head it is not mean-spirited at all. It's just an interesting data point. Harry Knowles, who does, of course, Ain't It Cool News, tried to crowdfund a season of this movie show that he used to do for the Nerdist channel when Nerdist decided not to continue to produce it. And so as part of it, as part of the campaign package, he showed some of the episodes that he'd been doing. And it really made me think that this is exactly how not to do a YouTube show, because he built a whole set that made him look like a basement, and he had all these totally unnecessary digital effects. And whenever they need to throw it to a clip, he would lean over to this little miniature a lamp house, and the miniature, "Hey Grandpa, why don't you roll that clip?" And there'd be miniature grandpas, the chroma keyed in, doing this, all you have to do is have a camera, get some decent lighting, get a decent microphone, and share what you feel about movies in a way that's engaging with people. It doesn't. He needed to raise $150,000 for a show that really could have cost him, maybe, if he was starting with bare walls and no equipment, should have cost him maybe $2,000, including the equipment that he was going to buy and keep.
Well, and if you look at the production value of Siskel and Ebert,
exactly.
So sort of to that point, Alex, is the original, I don't think it's a secret that one of the original plans for the new Apple TV box was was to make agreements with cable companies and offer more traditional TV packages, and apps was sort of something that had to be pushed up from the bottom. And now they say everything is apps. Are we at a point with the Apple TV where we have enough apps? Does Apple need to continue to make those deals? Do they need to get into original programming, or can what you and Andy are talking about come to pass, where sort of we become the new video generation?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Apple doesn't move down the content path, because I think that there's definitely some opportunities there for them, and I think that I do think that they want to keep on pushing that process. I think I think that Apple, I know that we had heard rumors. I don't know if it was actually true or not. That Apple was looking at things like NFL and so on and so forth. And I think that those are things that Apple actually is uniquely positioned. I don't think they need to just generate a bunch of new content necessarily, but I think Apple is uniquely positioned to do something like, I can spend more money than the networks to make this available. We really can't just drop the drop the hammer if we want to, and I think that they are in a position to take advantage of some of that in a way that other folks can't, and I think that would be that turning point, I think, where people suddenly just have live access to NFL games or whatever that
only on Apple TV.
But only on Apple TV. If they did that, it would that would be a real turning point for streaming video, I think.
Yeah, I really think this is one of those areas in which Apple totally missed the pitch. Just like this is Polaroid not realizing that digital was going to eat their lunch and put them in a grave. I think that Apple missed the opportunity to become what Hulu is and what Netflix is, because I think right now we're in a position where a creator would actually rather go to Netflix first than a network. I was reading some stuff about this and talked to a friend of mine who covers the industry in LA, because networks are now in the position where they're so making money on a show is such an iffy proposition for them that they are not going to let you make a show unless that you give them part ownership of it. And also, they're not going to let you make the show unless they have approval over literally everything. Like, whereas a generation ago, the producers of Cheers, the network would be part of the process of who they cast and what scripts go into production. But at some point, they've proven that they know how to do this show, and the executives are grateful that their entire attention can be focused on actual problems. Now, you cannot, if you have a background extra who has one line, you have to submit candidates to the network, and the network will pick who's going to do it for you. But now that it's like, if you go to Netflix, you get to own it, you get to cast who you want, you get to reap most of the rewards from it. I think that Apple would, if Apple were to create their own productions, it would be situations where here is a person that we love working with, and here's an idea that we love, or here's something we don't think anybody else is going to do unless we do it, or they're not going to do it the way that it should be done. I don't see them creating the next House of Cards or Orange is the New Black. But I think that they would definitely do certain projects that they're really, really pleased about, and just add that to
or something that pushes the envelope. I think that one of the things that right now our online folks, whether it's Amazon or Netflix or Apple, have gotten really good at playing TV's game really, really hard. And the one thing that they've disrupted is they said, okay, we're going to let you binge watch. We're going to give you all the episodes all at one time. So that's the one change that they've made. But there are so many other, when it comes to providing social outlets, providing augmented data, providing all these other things that online can do so much better than broadcast. And even now, resolution. I think that we're going to have to see sometime in the near future. I mean, Netflix is already starting to do 4K. Amazon's doing 4K. Apple is still stuck at 1080p. But I think that resolution is one thing that, as people get more of these TVs, can distinguish online, because TV is about to become the little screen. TV is like, it's going to take, there's still standard def TV networks, or stations, and there's, it's going to take forever to get out of 1080i for cable, because they already spent millions and millions of dollars on it. So, they can't get to 1080p, let alone, 3840, and so, so I think that resolution is one place they could do it, but also adding interactivity, letting people have online experiences while they're watching these things, I think is something that we haven't, haven't seen yet. And I think that in that social area where we watch a TV show or a football game and we're all talking about it together, that's something that right now online doesn't really do very well, and it could.
Well, Twitter does it really well.
No, but I'm saying, if we want to watch House of Cards. Mm-hmm. And we all decide we want to watch it together. Like it doesn't just start at 1 p.m. and we can all sit there and go, oh my gosh, it's that we've lost, I think, and I think that there needs to at some point be a way to reinsert that as making it a social experience.
But wouldn't that be cool if you could do that sort of as a hangout? If Netflix decided to create that feature where you already have a social group that you're making recommendations to, and you can see what their ratings, but you can say, okay, I want Alex, and I want Rene, and I want Leo, and we've all decided that we're gonna watch Caddyshack together tonight.
Or better yet, the cast of Caddyshack says we're gonna watch it and we're gonna talk about it. And if you want to watch it with us and hear us and ask questions and everything else, hit this button on
like the West Wing podcast, but broadcasted.
Yeah, but have it like it's not the night that it was debuted. It's like the next night. But so you could, but that would give everybody, from a pure revenue perspective, that gives everyone a reason to watch it that night. Or a reason to watch it at least once before that. Or we're gonna have the writers and the actors from Breaking Bad, talk about that episode during that episode, you could actually hear their voice over top of it, or see texts or whatever.
Well, it's you don't need a whole infrastructure to do that, because Twitter can be exploited so well by clever people. This season of Amazing Race, Phil Kogan, I'll never pronounce his last name correctly. I'll also never have his body, so that's fine. Or Arch and I are the way he can. So there are many ways I'm deficient, and I'm apologizing for mispronouncing his name. But yeah, so the show now, for both the East Coast and the West Coast feeds, Phil is there, tweeting behind the scenes stuff, and people who are on the race were also doing the stuff. And if you hashtag your comments, maybe he'll respond to it. Alton Brown live tweets during Cutthroat Kitchen, the first airings, and he draws all of his answers on little Post-it notes because he's looking for people who are asking questions, and he is staying completely in character as the mean.
So what is Alton Brown's? What is his thing with the Post-it notes?
I don't know.
Understand.
It's cool. And
there's a lot of people that do that. And I'm like, why are there's some science.
NSA has no business mining the data, how he's responding, to how people did, how these three chefs dealt with.
They only have 2 words.
They have piles of Post-it notes 3 feet high.
Mission. That's all I gotta say.
All right. On that note, we're going to once again hand it over to Leo so he can tell us about something almost as amazing as Alton Brown and his NSA Post-it notes.
Our show today brought to you by Wealthfront. Thanks, guys. We'll be right back to MacBreak Weekly in a bit. Wealthfront, though, is so important because everybody who's watching, everybody who's listening must have savings, right? For a rainy day, for your retirement. Your kids, are they going to college? You better save just in case. All of this means you got to be putting money in something. And I'm not talking a savings account or a CD, something that's going to grow, an active investment. And then you either have to manage it yourself, which, trust me, is not going to go well, because who has time? Maybe every year you'll look at it. Or you pay somebody to do that. And when I say pay, you pay 1%, 2%, 3% a year for everything you've got under management. That can really add up. That means you have to make 3% more just to pay for the manager, not to mention the transaction fees. This is no way to build a nest egg. Wealthfront is how you want to do this. Take a look. I'm not telling you to buy, because as always with any investment, when you're going to put your hard-earned money, you're going to want to go to wealthfront.com/MacBreak, and you're going to want to, take a look, read up about it. But I can tell you what I think is really great. First of all, not 1%, 2%, or 3% a year in management fees, 1/4 of 1%. 1/4 of 1%. And if you use our special offer, which is wealthfront.com/MacBreak, 0 of 1%, nothing for the first $15,000, which is fantastic. By the way, you also can get started as low as $500. So it's easy to get started. How does it work? Well, there's no human advisor. This is a computer program, but a computer program written by the biggest, best brains in the business, people who wrote the books like Charles D. Ellis and Burton Malkiel. They've got an advisory board to die for. It's based on Nobel Prize-winning academic research and best practices. It produces a great result, steady growth, year over year over year. They monitor it. Look, best you're going to do is maybe every quarter. Best your investment advisor, if you're lucky, every month. More likely, just right before he meets with you. This is better than that. It's a computer, so it's got nothing else to do. It's managing your investment minute by minute, maximizing for returns with the lowest tax consequences. It's called tax loss harvesting. It's brilliant. They're constantly readjusting to make sure you're balanced, you're getting in the right sectors. But we know this works because I hear from a lot of you listeners who have tried this who are thrilled, and I think you'll be thrilled. But go and read up on it, wealthfront.com/MacBreak. If you go there, you answer a couple of questions about your time frame and how you feel about risk. They will generate a sample portfolio so you can see what it would be like, what they'd be investing in, so validate it, right? They'll even look at your existing portfolio and tell you if you're overpaying in fees, what it's costing you, that kind of thing. That can be really an eye-opener as well. And one of the things I like about this is you get a dashboard of all your investments, not just your investments through Wealthfront, but all your investments at all the places you've invested in, so you can have a single dashboard where you see everything on your phone, on your tablet, on the web. Wealthfront. This is a great way to do it. I want you to try it right now. No wonder they have $3 billion in money and management, and it goes up all the time. It's very fast growing. Wealthfront.com/MacBreak. And remember, just for Twit listeners, when you sign up to invest, they'll manage your first $15,000 free of charge forever. Forever. Wealthfront.com/MacBreak. At least check it out, right? And we thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly. And back we go to the boys and girls, whoever. I don't know who's there. Hello.
So one of the other things that I thought was really, really cool about WWDC is Apple's continued focus on accessibility. And it didn't just end with the keynote. We did get a lot of features there, like Siri for Mac. There were some features they didn't talk about, like on the iOS 10, you can now use the camera as a magnifying glass, and you can shift colors if you have different visibility needs. But they also had continuous labs on accessibility across all of the platforms. And on the Wednesday, they had an accessibility meetup, which was remarkable. I mean, a couple months ago, maybe it was just a month ago, Apple had it. They built an entire house inside one infinite loop inside the atrium where people from Apple could come and learn about all the technologies, including Braille keyboards and cochlear implants and Siri and HomeKit and all the different frameworks that they provide. And they did that on a smaller scale at WWDC, where they had an area where the very talented Apple engineer who's blind and who did the DJing at the Apple Design Awards showed you sort of how he did the DJing with the DJ Pro app. And they had cochlear implants you could put on your forehead and sort of feel how the bone conductivity worked. And they had various apps on display. They had the American Sign Language Association app, and they were talking about how that was developed and sort of what you could learn from it. And I got to actually type with a Bluetooth keyboard to a Braille reader for the woman, and I'm going to blank on her name for a second. I just had it up here, and I'll pull it up again, who Haben Girma, and I apologize for mispronouncing that, who is blind and deaf and graduated from Harvard Law. But thanks to this sort of technology, she was not only at WWDC, but she spoke at WWDC. One of the best presentations ever. You just see her typing away, and the presentation goes up, and all of a sudden it's Obama who's talking to her. Totally undersold it. But I find Apple's continued focus on accessibility, not just in the technologies, but giving it actual time on stage and on the floor. I hope that's something that becomes more competitive, because I'm a firm believer that when you make things more accessible in general, you make them more accessible for everybody.
Well, and I think that this is definitely a not just a focus for Apple, but a very, very intense focus from Tim Cook. I mean, I think that this is coming from the top down. And I think that he's just very focused. I think that the more and more I watch, after the years of after Steve Jobs, is Steve Jobs got Apple to a certain point, but Tim Cook, I really feel, is just an amazing, next generation leader for Apple, where he's paying attention to all those other little things that make a difference, whether it's accessibility, and a lot of the political stances that Apple, has decided to take one way or the other. But I think that he's very focused on it, and I think that accessibility is becoming a very important piece. And I think that Apple has been very good at being ahead of technology, and what I'm glad to see is that they're also ahead of things like accessibility, and they're setting the pace for everyone. I think that we're going to expect to see closed captioning and subtitling and everything else in the next couple of years.
Described audio.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many parts of this that. These WWDC keynotes are so useful because it's as simple and simple-minded as a statement as this sounds. There is nothing in that keynote that they did not choose to put there. So it's super significant when they choose to spend so much time speaking in detail about accessibility features and people who have how they're going to make their technology accessible to people who have problems with vision and people who have problems with fine motor control and people who have problems with color perception. And it's not only are they talking about it because they feel as though this is as important as almost anything else that they're announcing that day. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they also acknowledge that this is something that they can be a leader at. And one way of defining leadership is getting there first and having the best solution and killing all the competition. But another aspect of being a leader is inspiring other people and putting their attention on something that you feel that they should be paying attention to. And of course, Apple's not the only company doing that, but I think that they're the company that's flying that flag as highly as they can. I mean, I brought my pick of the week, which I might be burning right now because I have to, because it's something that's relevant. The new Kindle reader has an actual special font selection for people who have dyslexia. So it basically it's to someone who does not have that problem reading. It looks like a very, very weird or stylistic or hippie sort of font, but it actually, the things that tend to confuse the brain that has a problem in actually discriminating letters and forming them into words, it basically gets rid of those hacks that kind of, that putties in those cracks in the sidewalk that a dyslexic brain will trip over and makes it easier to create. And when you think about software, it costs a lot of money to develop, but it's not as though you have to buy up all the manufacturing capability of the world to fuse glass to this new kind of metal that you've created. It costs money to develop, but in the end, it's just electrons. It costs nothing in the long run to add an extra font that makes this easier to use for other people. Just like the community that needs, again, interfaces that don't require quite such a precise touch, or that require mono output, or require a lot of help for people with low vision. That's not a huge market. It's also not something they're going to get a lot of grant money for. It's not something they're going to get a big advertising hit for. There's not going to be a telethon in which Tim Cook in a big fluffy tuxedo is singing to a person with a bad low vision and trying to get sympathy for the company. It's just something that they feel is an important thing. And although one of my broken record things about Apple is that I wish that they would make devices that are more accessible to people who don't necessarily have the money to buy a luxury item. But that doesn't mean that they're not focused on trying to make it so that there's a few barriers as possible while they can still be Apple and still pursue their business plan. So bravo to them.
Yeah, it's super interesting too, because from everything, they had a 9-year-old developer there as part of the grant program, and they had Swift Playgrounds, which we've seen more about now. And you can basically use the entire SDK right within Swift Playgrounds. It's not a traditional environment. You can't just burn iOS apps straight from there, but it lets you explore and play, and it's got lesson plans and everything built into that. And we saw during State of the Union that Interface Builder, for example, in Xcode, is now got voiceover support, and it's just one feature sort of after another that makes it not accessible only based on whether you have visual issues or auditory issues or motor skill issues, but your age, whether you've ever used a computer before. They're sort of making it so that you can onboard. And we talked about this before, not everyone needs to code, but if you do want to, it's now more approachable than ever.
Well, I think for me, the most exciting thing in the keynote was Swift Playgrounds. So I think that it is. I'm actually going to start. I'm starting to put together a couple of iPads and so on and so forth with my kids to actually have like code nights. Where we're just going to play with, doing some of these bits and pieces and see how far we can go with it. I think that when you talk about wanting code to be something that everyone at least understands to some degree, whether they become coders or not, I think is super exciting. I think that the things that I got really excited about that weren't necessarily in the keynote, but as you saw more of the sessions come out, were the Swift Playgrounds book creation. So you can, if you're a teacher, because I looked at these and I was like, okay, that's really great, but the kids are going to run out of these. When you look at the examples that they showed during the keynote, you were like, okay, that's cute, but that'll take 2 weeks and then there won't be anything left. Well, it turns out that anybody can develop these code bases. And so teachers can build their own, you can build them for adults. And as you said, the entire, the Swift library is all there. I mean, you can build anything. And then if you decide that you want to turn it into something that you're going to sign and make available, it's just moving it to Xcode. Yeah. It's not like you have to give that up. Your playground becomes, the warehouse, the factory, and so I just think that, for many people wanting to get into code or have their kids get into code, this is probably it. And I think that in conjunction with it being made, opened so that anybody can use, Swift for their development program, and the fact that if you're a school, you'd be nuts to use anything else at this point. I think that you're going to get into a situation where, 10 or 15 or 20 years of Apple plays this right. I think that that Swift is the de facto language that almost everything's written in.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because especially in this articulation of it, it becomes a programming language you can just screw around with. Yeah. And one of the difficulties, I mean, Objective-C was probably my 5th, 6th, 7th, maybe 8th programming language that I learned, but it reminded me of the one time that I played Dungeons and Dragons, where it's like, I want to have a sword in my hand and I want to fight dragons, or I want to have the magical staff that fires fire. But Bob, you're having me at a table here with lots of paperwork and making calculations and filling out forms. This is not as fun as fighting a dragon. And learning how to program in a highly structured objective language really is all we're going to try to do is try to print the words "Hello World." Now, first of all, you have to understand how this editor works. Here's what Emacs works. And by the way, no, you can't just simply give it a command. You have to load in the library that has all the stuff that will allow it to actually print something out. And then now here's out, and it's like, I really just want to say "Hello World," and I want to go over and over and over again like an AppleSoft Basic. And the ability to not only just, here is a command, and here's the result of that command on the other side of the screen. Not only that, but here is a dragon. Here's how you make the dragon bounce up and down. And how about if I have I want it to start and stop, so I'll have a start button and a stop button. And how about a slider so I can make it go faster or slower? And as these ideas occur to you, you can just screw around with it. And that's the best way to learn anything.
And you're in a safe playground,
right?
Where you don't have to build all those structures, so that you get used to the language. And then when you're gonna actually open up Xcode, now you're learning a couple big boxes, but you don't have to. I think Xcode requires you to learn almost too much at one time for a kid to learn it. I think that I would have had. I started writing code when I was 10, but I was writing BASIC. And I think that I couldn't imagine starting Xcode. Maybe I could have, but I don't expect that I would have started.
I've seen examples of you're a very, very clever boy.
Well, one of the really cool things about this too is it's got Replay Kit built in, so you can actually record and stream like the way you would Minecraft or the way you would video games. You can actually, and people can watch you do it. And I know my godkids, they love to watch videos while they're playing video games. It's just a thing that kids seem to do. And that's all built right into this too. So hopefully coding can become, I don't know, is that a possibility that coding can become as cool as playing video games or working in Minecraft?
Well, hopefully. I think that my son has an unlimited ability to watch Minecraft videos. I think that there is this moment where people turn to being able to make stuff themselves, and that makes consumption less interesting. I think I spent most of my childhood building stuff. I didn't really, partially a lot of that content wasn't there. Like when I got an Apple IIe, there weren't a lot of applications that you could buy, and the ones that were there were all $40, $50, which would be, a month of work when I was a kid. So, so I wrote everything, everything my computer did, I had to write code to do that. I think that but when you start realizing that you can build it, from scratch, I think that that's very addicting.
Yeah, I mean, when you don't have to, I think the way to learn any skill, and certainly the way to teach any skill, is not, here's your coursework and here's your lab work, and we're going to start off with the history of computers see the world in a series of ones and zeros. We call this the binomial theorem. It's basically you sit the kid down or whoever it is and say, what do you want this computer to do? Like, I want to see a bouncing dragon. Okay, let's figure out how to draw a dragon. And every time you want to do something, figure out how to do that. There's the greatest thing about that video that they showed during WWDC is it really did point out that in many cases the demographic that is least capable of bringing the art of programming forward are people who've been writing software for 30, 40 years. The people who can really have the insight to create the next immense thing is someone who they're a nurse on a ward, and they figure out it's when things go wrong, they go wrong in a really predictable fashion. I wish there were an easy way to keep records of when things go wrong, and then we can visualize how poorly those things work. And because they've been doing nothing but from 10 p.m. and to 7 a.m. saving human lives, and also when during 45 minutes where nothing's happening, thinking about this problem. All they need to do, you can teach anybody how to code. You can't necessarily teach anybody, here is what an end-of-life ward care in a cancer unit, here are what their particular problems are. That's the only person who can write that piece of software. And just for the same reason why it's easier to teach an astronaut how to be a geologist than to train a geologist to be an astronaut. That's why they only shipped one geologist in all those missions, and they instead put all those astronauts through the rock camp.
Right. Yeah, and I think that figuring that out. We build a lot of education stuff, and we call it, what we tend to call that is dessert first training. Like I'm not going to make you have the Brussels sprouts first. I'm not going to make you have it. Let's do something like when I was teaching kids how to model. I don't teach them how to. I don't talk about Boolean functions or anything else. I'm like, okay, here's the deal. We're going to we're going to take this little box and we're going to stretch it until it looks like a mean fish with big teeth and big eyes and and then they think that's great. And then after that, we can go back to the boring stuff. But let's do something really fun first. And I think that what playgrounds let you do is you can build it all around so they can do a couple things, and then it's really, they get that feedback quickly, and one thing I'm hoping to do soon, relatively quickly, is start tying it in with things like Little Bits and other things like that, because you use the Wi-Fi stuff that they have there and be able to have the kids understand they can interact between the iPad and the Little Bits, and I think that those are the kind of things that those are the building blocks, I think, of building potential makers. That I don't care if my kids become engineers or anything else like that, but having them feel like my daughter, who's 6, I want her to feel like if she wants to build something for what she's doing, right, that she can sit down and code away at something and build something that's gonna produce something for whatever she's designing. And
think about how one of the core difficulties as you transition through childhood into adulthood is coming to grips with the horror, the fact that you have absolutely no control over this world that's around you. You have two big grown-ups that are telling you you're going to school at this time. When you get to school for 8 hours, other grown-ups tell you you're gonna go dodge balls for an hour. You're gonna do math. You're gonna do this, and then you're told where you're gonna go on vacation. You're gonna told you have no control over anything. And whether you are learning how to code or whether you are deciding that. When I'm studying, I need to have like a low table next to my desk so I can put like my soda down. I'm not going to tip it over onto my thing. The first time that a kid learns that you can make that table, right, and you can solve that problem, or now here's this box, in the case of a Raspberry Pi, this little index card that costs $35 that will do exactly anything that you tell it to do, limited only by the amount of work you're willing to do to build the thing. That is such a beautiful warping of the mind, and giving that kid the skills they're going to need to cope with everything. That there are things you can't control, but here's things you can make. You don't have to simply be a consumer. You can be a producer of things.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be interesting to see. I think that the one thing that will be a challenge, I think, for Apple is just making sure that the support materials that go out are there, because I think that was one of the things when you look at iBooks, when you look at Apple will throw things out there and go, well, then we expect people to do
welcome.
It. You're welcome. We have done it for you now.
Although this was essentially a one more thing at a keynote, so I think this probably has a lot more top-down support.
But if you looked at the line for that, for the playground actual session, it was.
I saw the pictures.
Yeah, it was all. A couple other than us, like a couple of people did get how big of a deal it was.
I'm not embarrassed to say that when Swift was introduced, before I checked out of my hotel for my flight home, of course I had that big PDF of describing the language, and I read about half of it before I actually got home, and I was a good boy and I started playing around with it. And I didn't really get that far, not because it was complicated, but because the interest sort of tailed off. I'm not embarrassed to admit that I'm going to get this app, and I want to make the Mr. Hoppy Bunny go to the top of the tree and count the number of apples. And I'm going to learn how to program in Swift with this ostensibly kids app, and I believe that I'm not going to be a minority demographic user.
Well, why do you think I'm doing code night with my kids? Yeah. I mean, it's like I've been looking at like
no parent left behind.
Yeah, exactly.
The clipping on my viewport is going wrong. Do I need to have the center rotation?
It's like I wanted to go see Finding Dory, but you can't do that by yourself. You have to take your kids.
VCR programming for the next generation.
Yeah, exactly.
So sort of the last thing that I wanted to get into is, once again, rumors about the iPhone 7, this time from the Wall Street Journal, no less, that it's going to be we saw this with Intel. They used to be TikTok, and now this year it's TikTok Talk. Apple used to be TikTok, an internal improvement followed by a new redesign. And this year it looks like we got the new redesign with the 6. The 6S was the new internals, and maybe it'll be called a 7. Maybe it'll be called something else. It'll be another sort of more iterative design, absent 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Alex, is this a reality of when technology matures to a certain rate that it becomes harder and harder to push them forward?
Well, I think they just have to decide what's new, what they, there are technologies I think that are definitely there that they could be adding that, things like stereo photography, if they were just thinking about stereo photography. HDR is fine. Yeah, I think HDR would be great. I think that
the cameras do HDR. We found that out. They do deep color on the iPhone 6s cameras already.
Right. Well, and I would love to see. I mean, I don't mind. I would love to see the phone get. I mean, I have to admit, I still use almost every day I probably still use the DxO because I like to have the larger chip size, and you get used to that look, and you go, well, it would be really cool if that was just built into the into the phone, but it would make the phone very clunky. But I think that things like that, I think that we're going to see more interaction. I think that they'll add a lot of interesting things. I don't think Apple has to add, for them, it's not how to blow the doors off. I think that for them, the challenge is really how do we add enough features that people, not the last version, but the version before that, decide they need to get an upgrade.
Do you have a preference? Like if they do go to if they do go to 2 cameras, do you have a preference? Like if they do a regular lens and a wide angle lens, a regular lens and a black and white that pulls more detail for low light, is there sort of an ideal for you?
So I had I still carry it with me actually. I have a Fuji, the WS2 or WS3 or whatever, which is the stereo camera. It's got it's got. Right. I still take pictures of it because I'm working on an app. So anyway, but I still take pictures with it all the time. If anything interesting, I'm kind of like the 3 things that I'm constantly carrying around is I have the Fuji WS2, and then I have my DxO, and then I have a Theta. And so anytime, you can always tell anytime I think something's really interesting because there's like 3 cameras that come out. I don't have any big cameras. I just have these little cameras in my pocket, and I pull them out and take a whole bunch of different photos. But I'd love to see 2 cameras that are, I think that when you look at where Apple may go with augmented reality or virtual reality or whatever, there's a lot of opportunities there. And it's not just that you take stereographic photos. Once you have enough parallax between those lenses, you're talking about recreating the world around you and doing all kinds of other things because you can triangulate the position of pixels out in front of you. And so there's a lot of I think interesting things that are available to gathering that kind of information, which could be
like the Tango phones.
Yeah. It's I think it's as far as photography is concerned, it's kind of starting to become a mugs game. To try to, hey, we've got this immense new sensor and we've got this great new lens, because that's not terribly relevant, because the best quality pictures you get from a phone are it collects a series of numbers from the sensor and then does a lot of great number crunching for it. That's a lot. There's so much that goes on with the behind the scenes of an iPhone camera, where it is actually taking a series of 4 pictures and then combining the sharpest parts of each one of them. And because it's all happening so fast, it looks like it's just exposing the shutter. There's a picture on my Instagram of a beautiful full moon under just dots of silvery puffs of clouds being partly backlit by it. I was just walking along Harvard Avenue in Brookline, and just all I had was my little Nexus, not even a premium phone, like a Nexus 5X. But I know enough about technique that said normally, even with my iPhone, I would take a picture and it would be so cruddy with noise, it would be unusable. But I realized that if I put it into high speed mode and just take a series of pictures, I took a series of 12. And then used a technique called stacking, that basically you load them all into Photoshop and you tell Photoshop that whatever dots are the same in all of these, first align these so that they're the same, they're the same image. But then any dot that is different from one dot to another, throw that dot away. That means that basically all the random noise doesn't go away completely, but it almost goes away. And then that's stuff that you can do immediately. In terms of what Apple has to do, unfortunately, they're starting to run out of ways to get people excited about the new piece of hardware, because it's damn near perfect. And now there's just waiting on, is someone going to make a 16 megapixel sensor that meets Apple's specifications? And 3D Touch was a big deal. If you have 3D Touch, you have ample reason to love it. You'll have even more reason to love it with the next version of the iOS.
Did they train us to wait for the redesign, Andy? Did they get us on this? I feel like with Intel, it was TikTok. They trained us to wait for the next architecture, and Apple trained us to wait for the next redesign. It's are you going to buy the S model or are you going to wait for the redesign? And now people are preemptively disappointed that it's not going to be, I joke, a triangle or something.
You don't understand.
To your point,
I was ready to buy another one.
All the Samsungs look the same. Phones, we're getting to a point where a phone is a phone. They've come to sort of an ideal shape.
That's the other problem. So this is the OnePlus. Manufacturers of software and services and hardware give a plain English or a simple name that I can say without having to specify. This is called the OnePlus 3. The name of the company is OnePlus. And then this is the 3, the third version of the phone they have made. And I swear to God, I've been using this for the past couple of weeks. I'm going to take off the really cool bamboo case that I kind of like so you can see the build quality. And please ignore the sticker that I've left on it. But if you hold this in your hand and you hold like an iPhone 6 in your hand, you really can't. I can't objectively say that the iPhone 6S is built better than this phone is. It's got the same CPU as Samsung's flagship CPU. It has more system memory, so that app switching is going to be faster. It has a 16 megapixel camera that takes fantastically good pictures. It's super fast. It has 64 gigs of RAM, and it goes for $399, $399. It also has a fingerprint reader that's as fast as what's on the as on the iPhone. I'll be damned if I can figure out what Apple, in terms of holding a physical device. The day is done where you can say, oh well, it's nice that the Nexus 5X costs only $350, but you can see that they went for a plastic body and it's not optical image stabilized camera. There's no Apple's big problem is that people who are not necessarily go into the car store knowing exactly what the displacement of this engine is and what the performance is on the dynamometer. People who come in and say, I want a phone that does A, B, C, D, E, and I want it to look like I want it to feel good in my hand. You put this in their hand and you put the iPhone in their hand. And then, you explain that the iPhone costs $200 more, and I think a lot of people are going to ask, why does the iPhone cost $200 more than this when the camera has lower megapixels and actually takes pictures that are not necessarily better in A, B, C, and D, and E?
Well, I think that one of the things becomes, for a lot of these updates for Apple, it is a little bit defensive as well as offensive, which is that you got to make sure, like there was obviously one of Apple's biggest quarters ever was when they released a larger phone, because that made Apple in a lot of ways, just to keep on maintaining the momentum, needs to constantly put out phones that have an equivalent to the Android world, because a lot of us are tied into the ecosystem with thousands of dollars of apps, and so it's hard whether you're on Android or on a iPhone to switch, because and I will argue that it's probably harder to go from an iPhone to an Android because you've probably spent more money on apps, just because of the nature of the ecosystem. Not because, it's just that there's a lot more free apps and everything else on an Android that you can go, I didn't spend, this and this and this and this on it. It's a little easier to walk away from. But I think that there's, if people feel like they're generally getting that return, I think that becomes important. I think that, we are going to expect to see even higher resolution on the screen, not because we necessarily need it when we're looking at it away, but I do think eventually Apple's going to have to pay attention to VR. VR puts a whole different requirement on phones. So now like a 4K phone is just barely enough. Because each eye, when you're competing with, when you look at like a Crescent Bay, Oculus, is that it's capable of very high resolution, and phones are trying to get there's a processing speed as well as display quality that's going to get you towards a some kind of cardboard solution using that app. And maybe that's not the perfect solution, but there's a lot of momentum, and I don't think that VR is a 3D fad. I think that
especially because it demos so well, and there are other places. We talk about. I think that would be really exciting to have 2 cameras on an iPhone or any phone, not because of 3D, but for the ability to take a panorama of a room, and now I have a 3D map of the room, and now I can not just, hey, look, I'm in the room, but I'm now looking at the fake version of the room. I'm saying that I'm putting a sofa there, and I'm figuring out, well, here's what, if I've been thinking about putting a window right there. What would morning light look like if I put a window right there? And it's doing all that sort of stuff in real time. All that has to happen is Magic Leap become something that is affordable. If one, God love you, if one of your kids' friends has it, because then every kid is going to want to have it. And not only that, but every parent, just like the first wave of home computers. Like, all the little Tralfaz, he just wants a Magic Leap for if that's all he wants.
Or the upcoming PlayStation VR.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, my Oculus arrived yesterday morning, and Georgia Dow had stolen it by yesterday evening. So that's how compelling that technology is.
But it's not as simple as Google. I think that you can do Oculus and you can do Google Cardboard, where you do it kind of perfectly, and then you do it $15, and of course you'll accept that it doesn't work as well as something professional. It's difficult when you decide to take a 4K phone and try to make it suitable for VR. A lot of the Samsung 4K devices that work with Gear VR, they have thermal problems where keeping all those sensors lit up, keeping the screen lit up, and also keeping it like pressed against the person's face. It'll give you 25 minutes, and then it's not that something bad will happen, but we'll say, oh, well, guess what? Glinda the Good Witch has teleported you out of the glen and put you, and just for the VR, why don't you stick your head or inside the freezer compartment of your
Which is
fridge?
also why I think that cardboard has worked out really well in some respects, because you're not strapping it to your head. Cardboard is really designed as I'm going to experience a moment.
Yeah.
I'm not going to necessarily watch a whole film, with it. I'm going to see what it's like to be in South Africa, or or see what it's like to go back in history or be inside the body or whatever. And when you think of it as an educational program, I think those are things that are interesting.
It's successful in the way the 3D television could not be successful, because VR, the way that it's being expressed and articulated through phones, is applicable in any creative way that a sufficiently creative person wants to articulate it. The first time I used Gear VR, I was, I'm really not into gaming, but I'm sure it must be fun. And a nature documentary where the shark goes right over your head. Okay, that's kind of cool. I thought the most boring, and I finally got around to trying out Oculus Cinema, thinking that, if I've got an MP4 file on the phone and I'll play it in the fake movie theater. But I'll be damned. It's like I was spending so much time in that fake theater because
it was so quiet and there was nobody there.
Yeah, Tim Baharan was saying he only watches Netflix on the HTC Vive. It's just it's the only experience he likes anymore.
It's not only that, but like 1776 is one of my favorite movies, and of course I've got the Blu-ray widescreen that's been ripped. Of course, it was released in 1972, where the way that they separate themselves from television is we're going to give you the big widescreen format, and I've seen it like 1,000 times, but always on TV and always on phones and stuff. This was the first time I've quote seen it in a theater, and that's when I realized. And it's because the theater experience is so precise. You are in a seat. There is ambience, and there's a huge 60-foot screen in front of you. That's the first time I appreciated the way that a director set up that shot. You're not meant to see, here is John Adams, here is Thomas Jefferson, and here is Ben Franklin. All you're looking at the same time. You're meant to be going from like this to this, looking at the conversation between Jefferson and Adams, and in your peripheral vision, you see that, there's Ben Franklin asleep on the back there. And I felt like I was seeing it for the first time that way.
Right.
And
the kid was kicking your seat, and the popcorn was falling, and the person was shouting at the screen next to you.
But even that would
that's just in VR.
Seeing it with your friends, where you can actually hear a voice to your left, and then you turn around and you see an avatar, and it's of course they put the rumble pack behind it. Sit with your back on the rumble pack so you can say, if he doesn't settle down by the
one more
end
time
of the physical scene. I'm going to have words. I'm just going to have words. Words are going to have be had. But
yeah, so speaking of words, I think Leo has one last announcement for us. I think he's got one more in the can.
All right, more MacBreak Weekly coming up in just a bit. But first, I want to tell you how well I slept last night on my Casper. Heaven, I'm in heaven. Casper mattresses, proudly made in the USA, engineered obsessively to give you what I think everybody's looking for, which is, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's springy, it's soft, but it's firm. How do I describe that? It's exactly what you want. It's firm but forgiving. It's springy latex foam, supportive memory foam combined to give you just the right sink, just the right bounce, and just the right long-term comfort and support. And by the way, as the summertime comes and it's going to be hot, you'll love it because it breathes. So this is a cool mattress, and studies show that's important to your sleep quality. Casper offers free delivery, and here's the best part. And they had to do this, right? When you sell mattresses on the internet, direct from the factory, the first thing people are going to say, you probably already said this, well, I can't buy a mattress without sleeping on it first. You don't have. Here's the deal. Order your Casper mattress. Very affordable because there's no middleman markup, right? Starts at $500 for a twin. You order your mattress, lie on it for 100 nights. If at any time in the first 100 nights, more than 3 months, if at any time you go, yeah, it's not for me, you call them. They will come, they will get it, they will dispose of it, and they will refund you every penny. It costs you nothing. So it really is safe. And they know you want to try it. And what's better? I mean, 5 minutes with a sales girl looking at you going, what are you doing there? In a store with its brightly lit, the fluorescent lights and the people, or 100 nights in the comfort and safety and security of your own home. And you know why they do this? Because it works. Because nobody ever wants to give back a Casper. They go, this is the best mattress I've known. Mostly what I hear is what we did. People buy more. I bought one for my son in the dorms. I think I'm going to buy another one for him this fall. Casper. I want you to go to casper.com/MacBreak. Use the promo code MacBreak. You get $50 off towards your mattress purchase, any size. Terms and conditions apply. It's Casper, CASPER.com/MacBreak. It's the Goldilocks of mattresses. Not too hard, not too soft, just right. Casper.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly.
Leo, of course, on special assignment. I'm here with Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times and Alex Lindsay from Pixel Core, and they have merged their streams to combine into, like Voltron, something mightier than themselves.
Actually, I'm hoping that we can end the show by Alex saying,
"Oh, secrets."
Yeah. What? I'm Alex Lindsay of Pixel Core,
and I'm Andy Ihnatko of the Chicago Sun-Times, and the balcony is closed.
We need to loop that in and put it at the end. That is awesome. All right, so it is Picks of the Week time. And Andy, I know you quasi-spoiled your Pick of the Week already, but is it still okay to go?
I'll use that next week because I'm traveling and actually I like these sort of bizarre, not bizarre, but maybe a little off the wall. I'm suggesting that you occasionally go on eBay and just do a search for little plastic boxes. Because they're
as opposed to little fluffy clouds. Exactly. That's what I search for.
Little plastic boxes.
They're wonderful because I wasn't aware of the obvious that there are bulk manufacturers in China that will just sell you a jillion of something kind of useful for next to nothing, and because for no particular
a 1+3. Sorry. No, you said valuable for next to nothing. It applies.
It's not that it was so mean-spirited. I was kind of expecting that. The fact that it was so fast, almost as if you didn't even occur to you to not say it. That's disturbing. You've had control of the show for what? Only 2 hours and already right to his head. Oh,
yeah. Sorry, I apologize.
Sad, isn't it?
I'm contrite. Canadian apologies.
Canadian apologies. I mean, it's got cheese curds and malt vinegar on it. So I just bought a big bag of little plastic boxes, thinking because I'm doing a part of the house cleaning I've been doing is just trying to get things sorted and make sure that people are things. And so I get this huge bubble wrap bag that has maybe 40 of these, and it cost me $7 or $8. And so now when I travel, and even when I'm just going to the coffee shop, I have a little box that has that never leaves my bag, that always has a lens cleaning cloth, 2 AA batteries, a set of earplugs, a little bit of gaffer tape, and some lens cleaning stuff. So I'm never without
gaffer tape.
Gaffer tape. Sorry,
never without gaffer tape.
Never without
You're
gaffer
using
tape.
duct tape kit, which is what I use to extinguish the light on the front of my Apple TV because Apple won't do it for me.
Right. So now I know that I never leave the house with it. This is the dongle rodeo. because I'm traveling with just the iPad Pro, and I have to post photos and stuff like this. So now I have again. It didn't occur to me that I need to prepare a special kit. I'll order a special box. It was no. I've got a huge bag full of these little plastic boxes, and so when I needed to solve that problem yesterday morning when I was packing, I just simply said, okay, there is my USB. There is my card reader for my Android phone, and here is the SD card reader for the iPad. And now instead of rummaging, it'd be fine if it was just in one of the pouches of my bag. And I know if I keep pulling things out, I will eventually find this. But now I've got all these three things together in a little plastic box. I do. It's not like, mil spec. It does hold together very nicely. As a little bit of extra, I'll say there are two reasons why I had this little extra piece of gaffer tape on it. Number one, as a little bit of extra, insurance to make sure it doesn't pop open and spill its contents. But also that's a way for me to sneak an extra 6 inches of gaffer tape into my bag that I could then peel off and use for something to fix something. And I like it because it costs you next to nothing. You'll have like 20 or 30 of these, and it means that instead of packing for a trip or putting something together because you're going to loan like a battery pack or something to a friend of yours, and you want to make sure that they don't lose all the stuff, or make sure that you you don't forget to give them the one adapter that they need in addition to all the cables. Instead of thinking, oh gosh, wouldn't it be nice if I'd ordered like 2 days ago, went to a store and found a little bag? Like, no, you will have a bag of these things. You will simply grab one. You don't care if you ever get it back again, but now you've got everything together in one. So it's nice if you're stubborn like me, and it's very, very easy for you to not remember if you have actually brought the right cables or not, because now if you basically create a field kit that there is one of these in every single one of my bags, an exact duplicate of each one of these. So I've also got the real cables the USB cables that are the nice ones. But if I forget to pack that, I'm not screwed because I also have a mini one that's in this one. So again, just go. I'm not recommending any one manufacturer. Go on to eBay, look for little containers or little bags or little zipper bags, and I guarantee you, at the gift shop near the tourist attraction near your house, where they charge $4.80 for this, it's $4.80, and if you want 100 of them, they're just gonna like put a shovel full into a poly bag and mail it to you. You'll get it in 6 weeks. It doesn't matter to them whether they're selling you 4 or 400. That's
little boxes of holding. Awesome. And what about you, Alex?
So mine is I'm going to actually recommend the WWDC app, and that came out last week. I don't know if you guys talked about it at all. But one of the things, the reason that I wanted to talk about it a little bit was because I think Apple just did a great job making all that content available, making it available live, making it available scheduled,
so
making
quickly.
it available later. I mean, it is, and I think that I think that it's what WWDC does really well is they make all the content available. I mean, you basically can see everything that happened there without losing the value of going to WWDC because of the the one-on-ones with engineers and so on and so forth that you're there. There's no one would ever say, well, you made all the videos available, so now I'm not going to go. Or now I'm not interested in going. Number one is it's just there's not that many seats. But number two is, I think that it shows you what I think is the future of conferences, which is that we are, going to extend the impact of that. Whether people are paying for it or not paying for it. In this case, Apple doesn't need them to pay for it. But I think that we're going to make a great app to make sure that everybody can watch it. They can watch it in real time. They can watch it later. They can do all those other things. And I think that I think Apple's ahead of that. I think we see a lot of people doing small samples of their conference or little bits and pieces, but not only streaming all of it, but making it readily available and easy to find and easy to work with. I think that we're going to see a lot more of that as people see what the power is of it. And I think that Apple did a great job at it.
Yeah.
Well, people aren't aware that you can go into the ground floor has labs, and
half the reason for going to WWDC was, of course, I need to see the keynote. I need to see some of the sessions. Like now, it's not the only reason to go, but now it's like I can see the keynote from home, and I can download it, and I can also see all the sessions, and I'll have $1,200 to spend on a new MacBook that will be more capable of writing my Xcode.
There's definitely ones I saw going by, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to stop everything to watch this. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm going to be able to watch this next week. I'm just going to be able to watch the movie. I can watch it on a plane. I don't have to, and now you go up to the app now, and you can hit download. And I would definitely suggest downloading the Swift Playground ones because
it was cool. Great. And the downstairs at Moscone.
Oh, sorry.
No, there was a downstairs. Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. For people who are wondering what I was up to, of course, I was like, it's 90 degrees outside, and I walked like all the way here from the event, and now it's air conditioned in here, which means that all the sweat that was on my face dried, but leaving like a layer of like salt. And while I demonstrate that, I think I actually took some salt and put it into my eye, like,
ouch.
So I had to deal with this rather than you think that, you think that I can't see what you wrote there on your screen about my body odor. Well, you know what? I'm working on it. It's hot up there.
The only thing I was going to say is that if you're not familiar with WWDC, if you haven't been there, the entire first floor of Moscone West is called Labs, and you go in there, and there's on the left-hand side, there's just open area after open area where they have frameworks labs and web labs, and in the middle they have developer tools labs going all the way towards the back, and on the right they have a bunch of different areas where people can sit and download. But you're often waiting for labs, and what they do that I love so much is that they actually broadcast the sessions on big screens throughout the labs area. So if you're waiting or if you're sitting, if you're loading software because they have Ethernet so you can download the betas faster, you can watch the sessions. And for the last 2 years, originally the WWDC videos were, if you didn't see the session and you just saw the video, it was only the slide, which I find much harder to watch than an actual dynamic human presenter. But for the last couple of years, you actually see the presenter and they cut between them and they walk, and it's shot as well as the keynote is shot and as dynamically as the keynote is shot, and that makes them so much more human and relatable to me. And I find watching them so much easier, and you get all of that, like Alex said, right in the app. So, and on Apple TV, it's on Apple Watch, the complications were telling you what time to go to the sessions, and on iPhone and iPad you can just download and stream and watch them. It was really well put together, Alex.
I think getting back to what we were saying earlier about like how $10 million episode of Game of Thrones is competing with the hydraulic press channel. It's like if I time traveled back and told like 11-year-old Andy that someday you're going to have a 55-inch television set whose resolution is as good as any movie theater. Like, oh my God, what do we watch on it? Mostly demo videos of people writing code. And, and
wow.
Ben Heck soldering things. We watch that.
Yeah, exactly.
But why don't we watch Star Wars? Because George Lucas kind of ruined it for us.
Oh, don't make little Andy cry.
We still, but there's still Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is still. Don't watch the fourth one.
Right.
Third one, don't have good expectations for you. The second one is nice and scary, and the first one was always perfect.
The first one.
Andy's so excited. My pick of the week is something that sort of goes hand in hand with the Playground app. Now, Apple's been doing Apple Camps for a few years. It's Apple Retail that does them. It's available right now in almost every Apple store in the Northern Hemisphere. They're a summer camp, so Southern Hemisphere doesn't have summer right now. They'll get them later. But if you are in the Northern Hemisphere and you have an Apple store near you, you can sign up, and traditionally you can do iMovie and you can do iBooks, and they will spend a 3-day week, basically showing kids from the ages of 8 to 12 how to get into movies, how to get into iBooks. This year they're upgrading, so you'll be able to use an iPad Pro, and for the iBook session, you'll be able to use an Apple Pencil. But if you are in the US, Canada, the UK, or China, they're adding a third week to it, and that's a coding week, and you'll learn to code games and program robots. So they're using I think it's called Tint for I might be pronouncing that wrong, for the coding part of it, because Swift Playgrounds is still in beta and is actually meant for a little bit older age group from 12 and up. But this is almost like an introduction to it. And they're using Sphero for the robot programming. And you'll get a couple days to be able to learn how to do basic code, to be able to learn how to do basic commands for the robot. And they're also taking better care of parents this year. So if you're there with your child, they'll explain the apps to you. They'll show you how to do things like family sharing.
They'll teach you how to code too.
If you want to stay there the whole time, they will absolutely make you feel welcome. And every store is doing this. It's absolutely free. Sign up started today. So sometimes in some stores, depending on where they are, the sign up goes faster or slower. But absolutely head on over there. And you can go to your Apple retail store page, and you'll see the summer camp or the Apple camp sign up. I took my godchildren last year to the iMovie one. They had a phenomenal time. I'm going to take them this year to the code one. They're hotly anticipating it already. And I think this, again, just shows that, yes, the kids do get to see a bunch of Apple products and Apple stores, and that is good for Apple as a brand. But they're devoting a tremendous amount of resources and personnel and time and attention to education. And I really am optimistic about those kinds of things. Yeah. So Apple Camp, make sure you check it out.
Yeah, I'm glad that Apple's continuing to extend and expand the mission of the Apple Store to turn it into a real, not just a service bay and not just a place to trick people into buying a new cover they don't need, but also here's a place that we will give you free education and help you be even happier with the product that you were already pretty happy with.
I'm glad to see them doing more of it. I do feel like they lost something when they started designing away from the theaters, because I actually spoke at a lot of those theaters, and I really felt like it was a lot of fun.
It's back at Union Square, Alex.
I haven't. I was there
6K.
I was around all last week, and I didn't get to. I didn't go. Didn't go up to there. I got to go up there. I
will say with pride that I was the first speaker at an Apple Store theater anywhere in Europe. Because I was there at the opening of the London of the London Apple Store, the very first store. I was the very first speaker in that place. So I put a stink in there that no other presenter has ever managed to erase. That funk does not clear from that room once Ihnatko has spoken there.
It's salty funk. No, I mean they should be coming back. So Forum, which has those big screens and all that's geometric seating, should be a staple of some of the flagship stores going forward. So it's back, Alex.
Yeah, we did a couple MacBreaks from the Apple Store, and and it was we should do that again. Yeah, I'll talk to Leo.
The Playhouse gang.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leo will talk to Angela, and we'll just get it all worked out. All right, so that regretfully brings us to the end of this 2 hours of fun. Alex, Lindsay, if people are searching for you on the internet, where can they go? What are your latest projects?
Give up. Just give up. You're never going to find me. You're never going to find me.
At Alex Lindsay. No. I found you right there.
Yeah. So Alex Lindsay on Twitter is probably the best place to see, and that's probably the best place to find me. Of course, you can go to PickScore. It talks about training and stuff like that. But Alex Lindsay, and I'll usually post if I'm showing up somewhere where I have time to have a meeting, or I do random get-togethers. Usually I won't give you any warning, but I'll be suddenly like, I'm in Tokyo. Who wants to meet this afternoon? So if you follow me, that's probably the best
Who's
way
got
to go.
bail money?
Yeah. and the last two times I was in San Francisco, I ran into Shifty Russell, who every time I ran into him said he either had to go and record or edit the Material podcast with you, Andy.
Yep, we're doing. As a matter of fact, we're doing another episode tonight. It's it's funny. This is a complete barnstorming trip to DC. I got off the train. I went directly to the Washington Post building for this for the summit. Came right from there to here. Then I'm coming from right there to a maker fair that's happening on Capitol Hill somewhere. And then after that, going directly to recording Material. And then 1 hour after that, I board a train home.
It's a productive day. It's a productive day.
When you get $210 round trip out of Ihnatko for a day in DC, damn it, he's going to make every ounce of value out of that.
Exactly.
And if people are looking for you elsewhere, where can they go?
Spell my last name. That's the Rumpelstiltskin little spell you need to actually find me. I'm Ihnatko on Twitter, and you go to ihnatko.com and you can see. I try to remember to post links to places where things get published on the Sun Times site and podcasts that I do and other sundry synaptic misfirings.
Awesome. Leo couldn't be with us this week, but he will be with us again one day, hopefully one day soon. You can watch the show live at 11 o'clock Pacific on Tuesdays. That is 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe so, 2 p.m. Eastern. If you miss the show, though, it's available on demand on YouTube at twit.tv, in iTunes, every single podcasting platform in the known universe. Thank you both for helping me survive this show, especially when both of you were on location and I had to switch, like in the movie theater, side to side to watch you both. We'll be back next week. We will be back next week, and for now, get back to work, because MacBreak is over.
Skype sucks.
But you had the best engineer in the world working on the problem.
Oh, anyway, the only time I have to deal with Skype is this show. Not that I'm bitter. I just let you know how much I love you guys.
Well,
for me to deal with it.
This is why it's such a good timing that I'm here in the studio, because if I were back in Boston, I couldn't do this right now.
Oh.
Let it out.
That was beautiful. Now I'm totally jealous.
You're not responsible for Skype's emotional problems. And Skype is wrong to make you pay the balance on a check that it wrote itself for bad karma.
Bad check.
Andy Ihnatko, it's not you, it's Skype. Now in stores.